Some horror franchises evolve, some horror franchises decline, and then there's Jeepers Creepers, a series that started with one of the creepiest monster movies of the early 2000s and somehow turned into one of the most confused horror franchises ever made. Now, while not officially confirmed, Jeepers Creepers 5 is rumored to be in development, potentially releasing in 2026 to align with the franchise's 23-year feeding cycle. The sequel is expected to follow the demonic creeper hunting a new group of victims, with speculation suggesting a return of original characters like Trish Jenner and an exploration of the creature's origin. But before we talk about where the series might be going, we need to ask a bigger question. Does the franchise even know what it wants to be? What's up, pinheads? Welcome back to Psychopinion, the place where we break down the things that go bump in the night. Today we're talking about Jeepers Creepers, one of the strangest horror franchises out there. Because the first movie, honestly, it's a borderline horror classic. But then the sequel started changing the formula, the tone, the monster, and even the mythology. Until eventually we got Jeepers Creepers Reborn, which felt like it came from a completely different universe. And now the big rumor is that the studio is considering Jeepers Creepers 5. So today we're breaking down why the first film worked so well, where the sequel started to drift, how Reborn changed everything, and whether this franchise can ever find its identity again. The original Jeepers Creepers 2001 is a masterclass in slow burn horror. Directed by Victor Salva, the film stars Justin Long and Gina Phillips as siblings Derry and Trish. They're driving home from college down a long empty highway when they encounter a terrifying figure dumping what looks like bodies down a drainage pipe. And from the moment forward, the tension never lets up. The Creeper, played by Jonathan Breck, is one of the most memorable monsters of the early 2000s. What makes the movie work is mystery. We don't know what the Creeper is, we don't know where it came from, we only learn one horrifying rule. Every 23 years for 23 days, it feeds. First movie works because it feels like an urban legend. Small, claustrophobic, unexplainable, and that ending, brutal. Then came Jeepers Creepers 2 in 2003. This one moved away from the road horror vibe and dropped us into a much bigger scenario. A bus full of high school basketball players stranded on a rural highway while the Creeper hunts them one by one. The cast included Ray Wise, Nikki Aycock, and Eric Nenninger. The film leaned much harder into the action horror territory. We see more of the Creeper, more weapons, more flying, more fighting. It's still entertaining, but something important started changing. The Creeper was no longer a mysterious predator lurking in the shadows. Now we were watching him almost like a slasher villain with wings. The mystery started fading. Then we got Jeepers Creepers 3 in 2017. This movie takes place between the events of the first two films and tries to expand the Creeper mythology. We get new characters like Sheriff Dan Tashtego, played by Stan Shaw, who is hunting the creature. And the film introduces some very strange new ideas. The Creeper's truck is suddenly almost supernatural. It has booby traps, weapons, mechanical gadgets. It almost starts to feel like the truck itself is some kind of haunted artifact. Instead of deepening the myth, the movie kind of muddies it. The Creeper begins to feel less like an ancient monster and more like a supernatural villain with a weird toolbox. Then finally, we arrive at Jeepers Creepers Reborn in 2022. And this movie changes everything. Reborn was meant to be a full reboot of the franchise. The story follows a couple attending a horror convention dedicated to the legend of the Creeper. But this time, the Creeper isn't treated like a real creature, it's treated like an urban myth within the story itself. The movie stars Sidney Craven and Imran Adams, and it leans heavy into the modern horror style. But the tone is completely different. The Creeper looks different, the mythology is different, the atmosphere is different. Instead of a gritty rural horror, the film feels almost like a theme park version of Jeepers Creepers. For many fans, it didn't feel like a continuation at all. It felt like a totally separate franchise borrowing the name. And that brings us to the real issue. Most horror franchises have a clear identity. Halloween knows exactly what it is. Friday the 13th knows exactly what it is. Nightmare on Elm Street knows exactly what it is. But Jeepers Creepers, it's constantly changing its formula. Road horror, monster movie, mythology thriller, supernatural gadget monster, meta horror reboot. Every sequel feels like it's trying to reinvent the series instead of building on what worked. And more like an incredible horror classic followed by a series of confused experiments. And now we're hearing rumors that Jeepers Creepers 5 could be in development. If that's true, the big question becomes what direction do they take? Do they continue the reborn universe? Do they try another reboot? Or do they go back to the roots of the original film? Because if the franchise wants to survive, it needs to remember what made the first movie so powerful: mystery, atmosphere, and the feeling that the creeper is something ancient, something unstoppable, something we were never meant to understand. The first Jeepers Creepers movie feels like lightning in a bottle, a creepy roadside nightmare that built one of horror's most memorable monsters. But every sequel since then has struggled with the same question: what exactly is Jeepers Creepers supposed to be? And until the franchise answers that question, it might keep wandering in circles. But what do you think? Could Jeepers Creepers 5 finally get the franchise back on track? Or was the original film just a perfect horror story that can't really be replicated? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future horror deep dives here on Psychopinion. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you see a rusty old truck following you down a lonely highway, you might want to keep on driving. We'll see you on the next one.